Welcome to the Bradenton area, on the Gulf Coast of Florida, where the easy pace of island life comes naturally in this coastal playground with endless white sand beaches, stunning natural preserves to explore, relaxing vibes all around, and it's a seafood lover's paradise. Plan to stay a while to explore vibrant downtown Bradenton with top-rated attractions like the Bishop Museum of Science and Nature, and discover this friendly community set along the Bradenton River Walk, where you'll find lots of surprises around every corner. Come lose yourself in the sun-drenched Gulf Coast and change your reality here in the Bradenton area. Discover Florida's West Coast in Bradenton, Anna Maria Island, and Longboat Key. Learn more at BradentonGulfIslands.com.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good night, good evening, depending upon where you are right now. Welcome to Global Conference on Services and Retail Management into another session. We have an amazing session here today. Also today, we had an unbelievable experience. A Napolitan chef, Giuseppe, has shown us how to make the best pizza right from Naples, Italy. We couldn't go there in person, but we had an amazing experience. If you missed the live show, please go back to the GLOSERV website and make sure that you watch the video. Today, I have a distinguished speaker. I would like to invite him to stage, Dr. Damien Duchamp. Damien, welcome. Wonderful, good to have you here. Damien is going to do a very interesting workshop today for GLOSERV. Get them out of the cave using audio in an online learning. Let me just introduce you to Damien. Dr. Duchamp is the Assistant Dean for Online Education at the Wegman School of Nursing at St. John Fisher College in Rochester, New York. In addition to his main function, Damien teaches marketing, hospitality, tourism, and culinary courses at Frederick Community College and St. John's University. In 2018, he founded Teaching MVP, a place to share his passion for online pedagogy. He has worked with hundreds of faculty as they tackle the main challenges of distance learning, like we are all doing. When time permits, Damien works on global education and diversity, equity and inclusion projects through Hospital Talented, Travel Unity, ICRE, and Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Without further ado, Damien, the floor is yours. I look forward to your session, and I will be back at the end with questions from audience.
Thank you, Sihan, and I'm very happy to be with everybody today. Before I get started, what I will say is that this particular thought process around audio for online learning really was inspired by students. I couldn't keep track of how many students were coming to me and sharing, "Professor, there's just so much video." And they weren't talking necessarily about my course, thankfully. They were talking about all of the courses because as we'll do some fuzzy math in a moment, we gravitated towards video when it came to online learning. But I don't want to jump ahead too much. Let's start with the slides, and we'll set the stage. So this particular workshop is all about the idea of promoting audio and going a step further. So ultimately, what we have is a situation where we really have an opportunity to look differently at how we do online learning. So the learning objectives are to talk about the audio options that exist, and also to distinguish between the concept of borrowed audio and original audio. So I use this picture because it's very visual, and I love the scenery. When many of us, and I've been teaching online for over 10 years now, but when the pandemic hit, a lot of faculty were thrown into this situation where they had to teach online, remotely, asynchronously, hybrid, high flex, all these names that we've kind of adjusted over the last 18 months. And what a lot of faculty did for just natural reasons is they skipped ahead, and this is a gentleman skipping, that was the idea behind the picture. They skipped right over audio and went right to video. And so that was what was out there for the most part. And unbeknownst to them, they were piling on this sheer amount of video to the students. And the students, at first glance were very receptive because people are visual, and students were eating up so much video as it was in terms of all the social media that's out there. Think of how big YouTube is, Vimeo, and all the other platforms. So they were eating up video already. So they didn't really complain when their instructors were saying, "Okay, I'm going to give you a video to comprehend today's topic or this week's topic." So let's do some fuzzy math. This is what I was getting at a moment ago. If a full-time student is taking 4 to 5 classes, okay, and they are in an asynchronous course or a remote course, and just to give you my baseline, most remote courses are generally structured from an asynchronous perspective in the sense that we're using a learning management system such as Moodle or Canvas or Blackboard as the backbone. And the style is generally to provide content for the students to consume before they come to a live session. If it's a remote course or if it's asynchronous, they're just they're consuming it when they do each week. So you take 4 to 5 classes, let's say 5 classes, and they are expected to watch 1 to 2 hours per class. And that's just video that we find online. We find through open sources. We find an interview on from NBC. We find a tutorial on YouTube. We just cobble together all of these videos for that particular week for this student. If every professor does that, every instructor does that, that's a whole lot of video. And this is not even really including the original video that in some cases, and we all have these colleagues, they recorded 3-hour lectures and expect the students to watch them, because that's the transition that unfortunately a lot of institutions made. There was just not enough people to guide faculty in the quote unquote proper online pedagogy, and they just recorded these lectures. So you do the math and you have some students that are watching, 10, 20, sometimes 30 hours of video in a week when you put everything together. And this is on top of the video that they're watching socially, because they have to watch Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and all these other platforms so that they can keep up with their friends and family. So what happens though, as a result, is you have these students in the cave. I love this picture because this really does capture what most of our students have experienced over the last 18 months, maybe longer. If some students were already taking a slew of online courses, they're already in the cave. They're watching. And again, this goes back to this phenomenon where for some reason, when faculty make the jump from in-class, quote unquote, traditional, who knows what traditional is anymore, when they made the jump to asynchronous or remote learning, many have skipped over video. And so we're putting these students in the cave. Now, some of you may be saying to yourselves, I'm not one of those instructors. Great. You're using audio, you're using podcasts, but to be honest, and we all know that there's a lot of instructors that aren't even doing that. They're not even using any type of audio. They're just putting a few things that they find, or they're recording themselves for 3 hours. There's a lot going on out there, but the important part, and this is the purpose of this workshop, is we have to get students out of the cave. So thinking on the worst end of things, what if every faculty member assigned 5 hours, of video each week, and we're talking about full-time students? What does that do to a college student if we have them in front of the screen? Now, there's research that has really talked about young children because we've been worried about screen time for years, but it hasn't fully been addressed with college students. Now, I'm excited about some of the research that's going to be coming out, and at the end, I will provide an invitation to some of you to join me in doing some of that research. But what is that impact that it has? But let's not worry about the impact, and let's talk about an alternative. Let's talk about audio. So the nice thing about audio and why it's important is that, if you think about video and the research that has been done about video, students tune out after 10 minutes. Now, if you think about a 3-hour video lecture by an instructor, you could be the most exciting instructor in the world, but they're still going to tune out. Now, granted, the only exception that I've found is when I'm doing a review for an exam. They pay attention to whatever I give them, whether it's an hour, 90 minutes, etc. But a general lecture, what I call mini lecture, where you have an instructor, a talking head, talking to the students, they're not going to capture most of what's said. Now, the threshold, for video may be short, but the threshold for audio is actually much longer, and there's less drop off. And part of that is because of the dynamic. And I'm doing more research on this, but there's something about audio that is more passive, yet allows you to do other things. And I'll come back to that in a moment because I have a kind of a vivid example of this, which happened actually today. So if you go to orbilo.com, there's a report in June 2020. And this is just to give you a sense for what the audio world looks like. There are about 850,000 active podcasts, over 30 million podcast episodes. And most podcast listeners consume over 7 hours per week. Okay. So there's already this ecosystem of podcasts and audio that's out there. And I would contend that you can find a piece of audio content for almost any topic that you would want to present to your students. So the other aspect of this is, getting back a little bit to video, is when the students are watching video, they don't just watch one video and sit there and pay attention to just one thing. They're doing that. They're doing their nails. They're texting their friends. They're eating their meal. It's distraction city. Audio, on the other hand, there is a dynamic where you can listen and pay attention and engage with it from an auditory perspective while you're doing other things. Now, one of these schools that I work at, actually two of the schools that I work at, where I teach hospitality and culinary, Frederick Community College and St. John's, they're both primarily commuter campuses. So from a commute perspective, and thinking back to my days in New York City, I had at least an hour commute to get to campus. And a lot of students have the same commute. And if students are going to FCC, it's the same kind of thing. Audio-wise, I can listen to it in the car. If I'm taking public transportation, I can listen to it then. A student can also listen while they're doing household chores. Exercise is a big one. We know a lot of individuals will go to gyms, maybe not so much these days, but historically they would go to gyms and they would exercise, go for a run, go for a walk, go for a bike ride. They can listen to audio while they're doing it. Now, the vivid example that I was going to provide is just an hour ago, I was building our walkway and I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts while I was doing that. I was learning something. So the flexibility of audio is very interesting in the sense that it provides us with a lot of opportunity. So let's talk about the difference between borrowed and original audio content. So for those of you that are familiar with podcasts, there's all these different platforms that you can use. So most of you are probably familiar with Spotify because they're a world leader in terms of audio. I particularly use Stitcher and Google Podcasts. I also use TuneIn because I'm very much within that Google ecosystem. And through these platforms, you can access a number of different podcasts that are out there. Like I said, there's so many, 850,000 plus. Okay. And some of these you might recognize, and I'll point out a couple that are really entertaining. Well, actually, I'll let you look at the screen. And Tim Ferriss is always fun. He does a lot. From an instructor perspective, some of these are pure entertainment and they may not necessarily be helpful for your course. But again, these are just a small drop in the ocean of podcasts that exist. So in order to replace the video, you can also create audio. So instead of providing a video, sometimes I will record an audio piece for my students to give them that flexibility. This is an example of short audio, which is about Emancipation Proclamation, 6-minute lesson. And then you have longer pieces, and this one is 39 minutes. As a note, I want to put in here that we treat audio just like we do books or movies. They are protected. And so when we use them, we need to give credit. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is just something that I like to point out for instructors that are thinking about using audio. Now, if you can't find audio that you can borrow from those 30 plus million episodes that exist, you have the option of making original content, like I was pointing to a moment ago. One of the easy hacks that I like to use is in Zoom, when you record, it actually gives you not just the video file, but it also gives you the audio file. And that's something that you can upload to a number of different platforms. For instance, I'll use SoundCloud. Now, audio can also be used when you create it originally. You can use it as a learning activity. And this is the concept of active audio. So to give you the idea of what that looks like is here's a way to not only give them the kind of thing that they can consume, which they can do while they do other things, but it also gives something more active. So in terms of active audio, what I've done is activities where they listen and they prepare, and then they go somewhere. They listen again while they're doing the thing. So for instance, they might visit stores, and I might give them an assignment where they listen to the prompt and then they look for particular products on a shelf related to that prompt. And then when they're done, they listen a little bit more and they get the whatever the assignment piece of it is, which is, write 450 words about what you experience looking at the products or something along those lines. And so you can create these audio pieces that are not just passive and just learning, but it's also can be an activity. And this is an example if anybody's interested there, I have some examples of what those activities look like. So yeah, this is an example. So I did send just this a few weeks ago. I sent my students into a commercial area and they had to look for particular kinds of products. So that wraps up the content piece. And what I mentioned earlier before, and I want to spend a little bit more time on this, is there is a need for studying this further, which is the idea of looking at courses and providing students with the option of audio and video, and looking from a qualitative perspective at how they interact with that medium, whether there's a preference to video or audio and why. And one thing that I'll mention, getting back to video, the one really positive thing about video, which I don't want to overlook, is that video is especially good for students where English isn't their first language. Coming from an English-speaking institution, if students are from a place where they're not speaking English natively, video provides a benefit where you can see the lips moving and you can watch the video over and over again until you can fully grasp what that is. The other thing to consider is that students learn in different ways. So if we provide them with more options, whether it's audio, video, written, then we're tapping into the learning styles of all students. And more than anything, I'm really just pushing for us to provide a lot of different options for them to be able to learn, and not just go to one or the other and assume that they're going to learn that way. But audio is really, for whatever reason, it's really untapped. And I think that there's a whole lot more that we can do to explore what it's capable of doing. And that is my presentation, and I look forward to the conversation following.
Thank you, Damien. That's wonderful. We have quite a few questions here. Okay, let me just bring them to you, and you can also, for those of us who are watching us, please keep your questions coming. So I'm going to start with the first one. How can you keep attention in a generation of students? Everything is a bit size, just like you were saying, right? Social media, TikTok or Snapchat, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, etc. What is your thoughts about that, Damien?
So I love the question because it is reality, and I said, as I showed before, there's this idea of distraction city, and they are distracted. I mean, it's really hard to keep them captivated. If you're dealing with video, and here you have me as an example, I have something in the background which captures people's attention. I have something on the other side which captures people's attention. And I am very quick to do the same kinds of things that I would do in the classroom, to not just be a talking head with nothing else going on, but to engage them. I think the same kinds of pedagogy that we have traditionally known about within the classroom are super useful within, whether it's video or audio, using their names, talking about things that are important to them, that are relevant to them, tapping into pop culture. Now, we have to work at this. I'm getting older, and so some of my references don't always make sense because they have no idea what I'm talking about. So we have to work at it, listening to music, watching, popular movies and shows, those things are going to help to captivate them from an audio perspective and from a video perspective. But certainly in the audio area, if you're not familiar with this, and this is something that you can look into, I really believe in Easter eggs. Easter eggs are a great way of hiding little things in plain sight, whether it's written, video, or audio, so that the students know that there's a way that they can get maybe a little prize. So maybe it's a half point on the final exam, or something that they can opt out of, drop an extra assignment grade. So those are ways that you can make sure that they pay attention. Right now, I'm in the midst of designing courses for an online nursing program, new master's program that'll launch in the fall. And one of the things that I'm requiring for all of our courses is a syllabus quiz. Okay. And the idea behind that is that because they're so distracted, most students, even professionals, even graduate students, don't read the syllabus when they're supposed to. And so the syllabus quiz is a learning activity that will force them to dig into the syllabus and to find the things that are important. So you have to get creative, you have to gamify a little bit, but more than anything, you just have to show your personality.
Damien, you are giving me a lot of great ideas. As I listen to you, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm just taking some notes. I took two things I wrote down. One is, what you just said reminded me what I have started using maybe even 10 years ago when nobody was using online. By the way, I'm teaching online for 20 years. Since the first year that I started at University of Delaware in 2001, I taught my first online class. At that time, there was a software, still is today, Camtasia. Maybe some of you may know it. Camtasia came up with a new feature that you can actually build in some small quizzes inside the video. So the video stops.
Right.
You cannot even go. You have to answer that. And I used to build some points of an assignment in those videos. And as you are telling this to me that now this can be done even in an audio podcast, maybe tell them something to do, right? That then they will know if this professor is building some, because rewards work, right? People like rewards. Punishment works, but rewards are better than punishment. This one, maybe a bonus point, or even maybe making part of a grade is it could be a good idea. I think that, and the other note that I took here is that as you were telling me that students are not reading syllabus, which I agree, we don't even read. Like I am even not reading because of sometimes too busy or too much, right? And I'm doing this conference. How many times that we get emails that people, if they just read the email that we sent them, they would have gotten the answer, but they don't. So we have to. But another idea that you gave me is audio syllabus. Maybe do a podcast of a syllabus. Why not, right? There is definitely a research needed there. Let me go into the other questions. We have quite a few questions. Do you believe students became immune to video now? Should we keep changing to the medium every once in a while to keep attention? This is kind of like a follow-up to previous question. Do you believe that audio is different enough that they will pay attention?
I think that there's just way too much of it. And so this concept of immunity, I'm not sure if it's exactly immunity. I think that on both sides, video has probably become less effective because there's just too much of it. If you give the students too much content, they're going to have to prioritize, and there's something that's going to drop. In some respects, I think that they might go to the easiest of the bunch. So if it's easier for them to listen to a podcast because they can also take their walk, do their exercise, do their chores, then they're probably going to choose that over a video that they actually have to be stationary for. So I think that it boils down to what the content looks like and how active it is, and if there's something for them to look forward to within, whether it's the audio or video. So I don't think they're 100% immune, but I think that there's just too much of it. I don't know if you should keep changing the medium. I think you should provide diversity and different options for the students so that different learners can tap into whatever works better for their lifestyle. And there are some students that might say, look, I have 30 hours of content that I need to consume in a week. If it's presented to me in video, audio, and written, then I can decide how I'm going to consume it. I'm going to do this while I work out. I'm going to do this while I'm driving. I'm going to do this while I have some quiet time where I can really dig into it. So, having options is good. If we force them into one, it's not going to go well.
Wonderful. Damien, this is really quite interesting what you're saying, because we have a lot of questions. So I please keep writing these questions. I'm asking your questions. Let's start with this one. This is a follow-up to what you said earlier. How would you do an audio Easter egg? Maybe can you give a little bit more description of how this assignment?
So for fun, if you really want a kind of a neat example, watch the movie Super Troopers. And some of you probably know Super Troopers, but they would give each other these challenges where they would have to say meow in the middle of, they'd pull somebody over, who is speeding, and they would have to see if the person the trooper could say meow so many times. Now that's not a perfect Easter egg because the person's just confused about what's going on, but you could set up the audio at the beginning and say, towards the end, somewhere in this audio lecture, I'm going to share the name of a well-known Greek god. The first student to email me with the name of this Greek god will receive a half point on their final exam. And so you can plant that wherever you want in the audio file, or you can be tricky about it. Either way, it gives them just an added bonus to actually pay attention. And this goes right back to what we've been listening for probably 100 years, because radio's been doing it forever.
Exactly. This is great. So I'm going to combine two questions. Sure. I want to show you the first one and the second one, but they are kind of like related. That's why. The first one is, do you believe that we need to offer options to the students? For example, give them a video option, an audio option, or is this overkill? And in relation to the student question, how does your narration differ when presenting your content in a video or audio formats? Actually, with the first question, when I read that, I thought about maybe make a video and take the audio, make that as a podcast. Is that a right approach, or should that be a different?
The second question actually ties really well to the first question, like you saw. If you speak in a manner that adapts well to audio and video, then you can kill two birds with one stone, because you can record yourself through Zoom. You take the audio file, you make it available. You take the video file, you make it available, and you're not doing it twice. Now, if you record video and you're just a talking head and there's no movement, there's no change in tone and whatever else, they're going to be asleep in 10 minutes. But, and, so whether you do that in video or audio, it's the same kind of thing. If audio, you hear somebody that's just, they're going to be asleep as well. So ultimately, you can create a script that, for me, I don't do an exact script. I give myself talking points. I give myself things that I want to cover. And then I go into it from a recording perspective. And then you can just take the audio, take the video, and you give the students both options.
Right. And as you are telling this to me, I'm thinking of somebody that was doing a video, and he was actually explaining everything in the video, so that in the audio, because he knows that students are not going to see this video. Now you're watching this video of this person, whatever. I think that's great. So here's another question here. Would you suggest that audio content could be a bit longer than the 30 seconds to 5 minutes? We would limit the video for maximum impact.
If you're doing video, you don't want to do anything over 10 minutes. That's pretty much the hard, fast rule. And what, when I work with faculty to create video, I say, okay, let's create scripts and let's do mini pieces. Let's do a buffet line of topical areas, so that this video is on this video, this video is on this video is on this, and they're each between 7-10 minutes, okay, around there. For audio, you can go a lot further. You could go 45 minutes and it'll be just fine, as long as it's engaging in the sense that you're telling a story, you're providing vivid examples, like you said before, describing something. You know who does this really well is a lot of sports commentators. When you're listening to ESPN radio, for instance, they will describe in very vivid detail what's going on the court or on the field. And that's just how they do things. If they were on screen and you're watching the game, they don't need to provide as much detail. You saw them, score the touchdown. But, we as instructors can borrow from other areas to make our video and audio a little bit more engaging.
Yeah, that's a great example, that you just gave, because if you're listening to a game in the radio, it's very different than in the. Okay, that's great. So let's go into other questions. There is two questions that are also related to each other, but let me ask this one. And I sincerely, even myself, don't know the answer of this. I'm pretty comfortable with video. What are your favorite ways, software, to disseminate audio to your students? I know how to record audio, but I'm not sure how I can make them accessed easily by my students.
Right. Well, I think that there's, from a basic file perspective, let's stick with Zoom because it's so dominant right now. The fact that you can do a recording and just grab the audio file, to keep it simple, you could actually just provide that audio file to the students depending on what platform you're using, and they will pick the platform that they listen to it through. So it might be through the Apple platform, it might be through something else, but we have sound audio software all around us. Like we don't have to worry about that. But if you want to go a step further, and this is the choice that I have made with some of my projects, I like SoundCloud. I like SoundCloud because you can upload and then you can provide some screen art. And so you can give it a little bit more packaging so that it's a little bit more exciting. So if you were to pair up Zoom with SoundCloud and a little Canva to create some art, then you have a great combination in terms of creating something that the students are like, oh, look at this. This is interesting. This is specifically for my course. And it looks just a tad bit more professional.
Okay, that's great. So, and that sound, what was the name of the
SoundCloud?
SoundCloud.
Yeah, SoundCloud has been around for a long time. It's actually a very important platform, especially for DJs and musicians of all kinds. But it has now grown within the podcast world to become a really helpful platform. But there's a number of platforms that are out there. And I will say, and I'll just throw this out there, anybody who wants to ask me more questions obviously can reach out to me, and I can explore some of those platforms with you. So
wonderful, thank you. This is related to this question. Let me find it. Here you go. Okay. What are your thoughts about making your audio content public versus just share with your students, your audience, maybe your employees, right? If you're in a hotel or something, you're using this as a training material, because this, the examples that give SoundCloud, YouTube, like for video, they are pretty much public, although you can make them private. But what do you normally do?
I tend not to hide what I create because there's so much work, especially the work that our students create, that never sees the light of day, and it's good work, and so if you use a platform, just like you said, YouTube, SoundCloud, you have the ability to hide it from the world. But what if, and this gets into intellectual property, and as faculty, we get a little bent out of shape when it comes to our IP. But, if we can provide something, put something out there that, who doesn't have access to formal education or easily, or the finances to do so, if they get to learn from something that we get to produce, I don't want to stop that from happening. So.
Okay. Damien, in this particular context, I used to make my lecture videos, sometimes audios as well, but I usually mainly use videos. And I used to put them in the learning management system, Canvas. So it was kind of closed, right? But later I thought to myself, and I said that if I have a good teacher, and if I do a good job in transferring the content to my students, why not use this as a marketing tool for my school, for myself also. And I start putting them on YouTube, make it public, and surprising some of them, nobody watches it because who is interested in PCI DSS, payment card industry data security standards? That is part of a technology class, but some of them actually watch thousands of times. So I guess this is something good to think about how you can even use this outside of just the main purpose, which is to educate students. Maybe other people can be kind of use this. Okay, here's another question. Do you think audio can be used in a traditional classroom? So when we are face to face, right, to supplement or maybe other ways. Have you ever thought about this?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at it from a flipped classroom perspective, it can absolutely play a part. The idea that before the student comes into the classroom on Thursday, the expectation is that they've consumed something before they walk in the door. Traditionally, that's read your textbook, read the article, etc. But in more recent years, it's read, but also watch, and now we can add the audio piece. But to take it a step further creatively, there's nothing that says that we can't replace that video that we show in the classroom with something that's audio. Just think of music and opera and other subject areas where certainly in those courses they're listening. The instructor will say, okay, for the next 5 minutes, we're going to listen to this concerto, and I want you all to close your eyes and just pay attention. From an active classroom perspective, there's no reason why we can't create some audio that would be used even in the live session. Exactly. Audio is just another medium. And if you think about it from a senses perspective, I do this actually quite often. I'll tell, my students who can see, to close their eyes and just listen, because it may be a speech, it may be something that if their eyes are open, for instance, they might not get all of it because they want to focus. You want them to focus on their ears. So I think there's a lot that can be done in the traditional classroom, whatever that is these days.
You're getting some compliments, Damien. So solid, finely tuned, and polished. Practicing what you preach is leading by example, and you are providing a fabulous example. Bravo. So I just wanted to show that to you, that you are appreciated. And here's another question from one of our viewers. Since we cannot see each other in the audio podcast, you kind of touched this earlier, but it's hard to tell if you are bashful, bored, sarcastic, and so on. What would you recommend as an approach to successfully communicate with audio?
I think you call it what it is. If you are recording audio and you mean for something to be sarcastic, say what it is and say that was meant to be sarcastic, or say, I'm feeling a little vulnerable right now, but I'm going to tell you this story anyway. So you can add color to your audio, but again, it goes back to the basics of storytelling. And there's a lot out there that you can read, watch, and listen about good storytelling and how that can be put within the framework of a course or an audio piece that you provide your students.
And I know, Damien, I was checking your website, and you do have quite a few materials that are about storytelling, mm-hmm. right? As a way to train people to educate online. So it's really important as well. Okay, here's another question for you. You are in a nursing school in which it is very applied, and hospitality and culinary, for that matter, is also in the same token. Do you think that there is a place of online learning in a highly applied field like yours? What is your thoughts about that? I'm curious because you are the director, assistant dean of online education.
Well, if there wasn't the ability, then I wouldn't have a job. I was hired specifically to launch 5 new master's programs, and they're all nursing, and it is very heavily applied. And the brass tacks of it is that, which is a strange expression, but the reality is that for a very long time, people would say it couldn't be done. Nursing is a perfect example of it, but culinary is also a great example of it. But lo and behold, a year ago, I was asked to develop a culinary course completely asynchronously. And tonight, I'm actually doing the final practicals for a culinary course, and it's done through a live session, and we'll have chefs, zooming in. These things can be done, but we have to believe that they can be done. We need to have a certain level of optimism. And this is a silver lining from COVID, is that a lot of things that we said could never be done, we figured it out. And it's not going to work with every course. It's not going to work with every module that we create within that course. But every week I'm having conversations with faculty, and the question keeps coming up. Is that something that we can do asynchronously? Is that something that could be recorded? Is that something that we can shift to this part of the module so that when we get into the live session, it's all about application, not just regurgitation? And that's hard for instructors in some cases if they've never done it before. But I think that we're gaining momentum in that respect, because we have a lot of examples around us about how it can be done.
Damien, when you are telling me about the answer to this question, I thought of sometimes how I describe the use of technology in the hospitality field. I think it's the same. And I because students often ask me, isn't using technology against the hospitality field? And I tell them that actually it's the opposite. If you allow the hospitality staff members to use technology, they can actually get rid of some of the stuff easily, so they can focus on the guest more. I guess that maybe in nursing, hospitality, culinary, or any hands-on, maybe knowledge transfer can be, taken to the online format, so that the faculty can actually do the hands-on activities even more time. So instead of just spending maybe, I don't want to say, of course, a downtime, but in a classroom, you can use that one for better things. You're right. I mean, this is one of the silver lining of this pandemic. Okay. What about this question? Are you aware of any research about the effectiveness audio versus video, or both for that matter?
I'm sure it's out there, and I probably could have worked a little bit harder to find it, but I haven't found it. It's certainly not low-hanging fruit in terms of research, and that's why I'm going to be conducting a lot myself, and that's why I'm inviting people to do that research with me. And ultimately, the idea is, if we can dig into it a little bit, then we can find some best practices that could be put into action almost immediately. I think that there's some outside of the target research that could be applied to the conversation, just like there always is, especially from the perspective of the senses and how we take in information. And certainly there's research out there, which I've read and consumed about, different styles of learners and how they react better to different things. And, I said it before, there's, students, if you're talking about English speaking institutions and you have students where it's not their first language, there's benefits, for different mediums for them to be able to really get something, which is actually a benefit over the traditional classroom.
Exactly. And Adam Carver, one of our professors at the University of South Florida, is listening to this session right now. And he's the one who asked about the Easter egg example to give ask you to give more information. I bet that because I know that he has done his dissertation on the use of cell phones by students. Is it to complement education versus to distract them? I bet that he is probably thinking about some research about these Easter eggs, because as you were telling me that, hey, look, if we were to build in some Easter eggs in our audio or maybe video content, is the outcome maybe a test at the end, the learning is different or not? That is something. I mean, I definitely agree with you that it's not low-hanging fruit out there, but there is definitely a lot of need to do research in this field so that we can explore more and we can get the best practices.
And I'll just throw in a little piece about that. There's a reason why Marvel movies have Easter eggs in every movie. and it's done pretty well for them. I think they've done pretty okay with their movie franchise. So Easter eggs, if you want to look at the masters of Easter eggs, you look at Marvel and how they throw in little things. If you're unfamiliar, look at Marvel and do a keyword search, Marvel Easter egg, or reach out to that person you know who is a comic book Marvel fanatic, and they will give you all the information you need.
Interesting. Here's one more question for you, Damien. What are the implications of using audio in training in the industry? Have any thoughts about that?
100%. I've actually recorded a tremendous amount of audio specifically for that purpose. And the idea was to prep staff at a hotel or restaurant. It's the idea that, before they go into their shift, audio that they can listen to think about a different way of doing things, from a customer service perspective, from a quality assurance perspective, from a, just excellence perspective, things to think about. So audio is 100% something that could be utilized within the industry.
Wonderful. Absolutely. That's great. And with your permission, Damien, I would like to show your website. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
I have it here, and I really find it very helpful to myself. So profduchamp.com. As you can see here, I'm going to just share. Please feel free to go in here, and I really appreciate you, Damien. And that was, when I see this, the projects that you have. Can you please tell us? I mean, even though there is no student, teaching MVP.
Sure.
What is this project?
Yeah, Teaching MVP is really my clearinghouse for everything that I do from a pedagogy perspective. It's very leaning into online learning right now. So there's a number of recordings, mainly video, but some audio, that to really wrap your head around how to use Canvas or Blackboard or other platforms. The one that I was going to mention before, and I'm glad that you brought this up, HospiGo is actually a very audio based project where I load up micro SD chips with content, with pictures, with documents, with recordings, and then I distribute them mainly in Ghana, West Africa, to people, a lot of young people, so a lot of kids. And the idea is to circumvent the need for internet. Having a micro SD chip that they can pop right into Android phones, which are dominant in a place like Ghana, they can learn on their own, and then they can share with others and work on projects. And there's some activities that are built into it. So that's a version, kind of a leap off of some of these ideas in terms of audio learning and video learning.
This is great. I mean, there's really a lot of content here. So I invite all of our viewers to go to Damien's website, profduchamp.com. I think you can see it here. That there's quite a bit, a lot. Of course, if you click in there, you'll be able to see. So I also thank you, Damien, for all you do, not just for your students, but for the greater community. I know that you are providing almost every content in your website free of charge, public domain. So I appreciate you very much. So thank you. Any other closing comments? I don't have any more questions right now. Anything that you would like to close up with?
I think probably the biggest thing is, if I have the stage, online learning, what has happened over the last 18 months has been disruption in the purest sense. We were making strides, and I've been teaching faculty how to teach online for 7 or 8 years now. And we were just starting to get some momentum. And then COVID hits. And then all these faculty members, instructors are thrown into the deep end of the pool, and the bar was effectively lowered for what online pedagogy was supposed to be. And chairs and department heads and divisions and provosts and presidents were saying, "You're doing a great job," to the faculty member that's recording 3-hour video lectures and calling that a class. And so we have a lot of work to do, and it's going to be a couple of years before we get back to some sense of normalcy when it comes to online education. And we have to help each other. And those of us that get what true online education is, we have to have some difficult conversations with people that can make a difference. We have to have difficult conversations with our colleagues. And this gets really muddy when it comes to politics and stuff on a college campus. But at the end of the day, our students are on the receiving end of this education. And I can't tell you how many times I've overheard parents and students say that they're not learning anything because the way that the content is being delivered. You know, I've had faculty tell me directly, "Oh yeah, we're switching to this new platform. I just don't want to have to do anything." You know, and I'm just, but why are you doing this? You know, why are you teaching in the first place if you don't care about what the outcome is? So we have to help each other get better. And there are a lot of really talented people out there that know how to teach online effectively. And we need to work with them, and we need to drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, so that we can create courses that really engage students. And it's honestly, it's not that difficult if you just put in a little bit of time. And that's a lot of the work that I do. I just was on a call last night with a faculty member, and just to say, you know, this is not something I get paid for. I just do it because I like to do it with faculty at different institutions. They want help. There's a lot of faculty that want to do it, but the reality is a lot of my colleagues in online pedagogy are overwhelmed because you have an entire institution that's teaching remotely, or an entire institution that's hybrid, high flex, or whatever you're calling it. By the way, high flex is not great. It is, you're asking instructors to teach in two modalities at the same exact time, and it's hard enough to teach in one. So we have a lot of work to do. And if anybody wants to have further conversations, I'm all for it. And I think that the future is bright, because another silver lining of the pandemic is that through online teaching, we're actually learning how to become better instructors in a traditional classroom. You know, I hear it all the time from the faculty I'm working with developing these master's programs. They're like, I haven't never thought about it that way. It's like, yeah. And that's great. So.
Exactly. Thank you, Damien. This is really very, very helpful to me. I really appreciate it. I'm sure that it's very helpful to audience. But I do know that from this session that you have done, you will get some calls. I hope that you will not blame me for it. But it's great work, and I would love to work with you in you know, spreading the great effort that you're doing. I appreciate you. Thank you for your time, and also thank you to our audience for their questions.
Yeah, great question. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Damien. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you at other sessions at GLOSERV. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever that might be. Thank you.